What's the one action in the body that has the most number of muscles assigned to it, do you think? Okay, so I'm not going to say for sure it's the most because I don't know. I haven't counted up all the different functions that we have in the muscles. But what action do you think that might be so vital to our survival as humans that we have to give this function a lot of capacity and resources, with lots of small and quite a few large muscles as well assigned to that, just so we can carry this function out? Now, you might be thinking of the heartbeat, muscles involved in digestion, or perhaps breathing, and it's true, there are a lot of muscles that will support the accessory muscles of respiration that will support breathing, that create space in the chest and so forth. But there's one function that has around about 40 muscles at least ascribed to making it happen and telling you that this action is pretty important, and that action is the action of facial expression. All this list of muscles around the face and this big muscle around the front of the neck are all given the action in the textbooks of superficial or deep muscles of facial expression. So the question is, why is facial expression so important? Well, if we're going to express any kind of emotion, disgust, anger, surprise, suspicion, then it's going to happen in our face. That's where people are looking at. It's why pulling 4 aces in a poker game is going to be hard to hide, at least for me anyway. When we're teaching babies or children not to put things into their mouths or sticking their hand in their potty, we go, yeah, yuck, nasty, dirty. And this is something that we learn, and we learn to express a whole range of emotions and dangers and signs through our face without having to speak. Ultimately, it means that we probably owe our survival as a species and in our own lives to this group of muscles making this action, apart from those muscles keeping our organs going, of course, make this action one of the most important grouping in the body. Facial expression also extends into the cultural aspects of our humanity. Scary masks are often used as tribal rituals, and you only have to look at that traditional Maori war dance, the haka, that's performed before every New Zealand rugby game to see how those facial expressions can be used to be really intimidating or inspiring. Now, in the West, we've grown up with this tradition of clown makeup, and it's interesting when you look into it because it has its roots deeply set in rebellion and political satire. So the European nobility from the 14th century all the way through to the earlier 18th century wore heavy white makeup, and pale skin was a sign of not having to toil outside under the sun, which was a luxury only reserved for the aristocracy. What happened was, in the travelling theatres and pantomimes, it became easy for this makeup to be exaggerated and facial expressions to be taken on, and it became a way to satirise the upper classes and express criticism and rebellion and take the mickey out of them. And so I guess it also might have offered protection as a sort of disguise, if you like, as well. So this kind of masking, whether it be through makeup or carving, offers a way of providing expression and keeping it there, and it wouldn't be possible if you were just going to try and hold your own facial expressions. It can exaggerate certain features, and it can provoke a theme or an intent. You can have the whimsy of the mime artist to the menace of Heath Ledger's incredible Joker in The Dark Knight. It was interesting because during a span of 6 weeks, Heath Ledger locked himself away in a hotel room and compiled his character diary, experimenting with voices, expressions and mannerisms that would fit that part. And the ultimate look was inspired by some of the paintings of Francis Bacon, so they're incredible and quite disturbing imagery that he puts out on his canvas, and they became part of the tapestry that was part of that film. Now, in that list of muscles of the face, I didn't mention the eyes, which have another whole bunch of muscles to move them as well as act so that the signal from the eye actually gets to the brain. And if you've ever been that teenager or been telling that teenager off for having a go at them, the reaction that rolling your eyes can get so infuriating. No muscles except, just that. Kathakali is a classical Indian dance style from Kerala in the south of India, and it tells the stories from the Hindu texts such as the Ramayana, and they use a lot of brightly coloured makeup, and performers use an irritant in the eyes to make them bright red, and the redness expresses evil or anger in these dances. And the whole performance is based mainly on hand gestures in the face and the eyes, and these express 9 emotions. There's love, comedy, impatience. There's also one of being pathetic. Anyway, get a mirror and you try them. Just make sure you're on your own when you try it. So there's a really interesting element to facial expression in as much as different parts of the brain can trigger different expressions. So when someone points a camera at you and says smile, you know, how many times do you feel awkward and sort of pull a grimace, sort of rictus grin at the camera? And this is because when somebody says smile, you have a voluntary action, which is to engage the muscles in the face and pull them back. We might not be happy about somebody snapping a picture, and we might be in a terrible mood, but we sort of have this performative expression on our faces, and celebrities and certain other people have got this down to a fine art. But then there's also an emotional component to the smile. When we're generally pleased to see somebody, happy to see something going on, we're amused by something, made to laugh at something, these muscles are triggered by a different part of the brain. It's the same muscles, but a different brain function or a different way of getting there. So when something goes wrong, such as a stroke or another kind of brain injury, somebody might not be able to smile, but can instead, when asked, sort of create this weird facial grimace. But when emotionally stimulated by something or someone, they can smile as normal. And this is a phenomenon known as volitional facial paresis. That person can no longer use the voluntary pathways to smile, like, you know, pointing the camera in their face. The motor cortex driving those facial muscles has been damaged, that part of the brain, but they can still have an emotional smile. And that's because the area of the brain that processes emotions in the areas such as the limbic system project to the facial muscles via a sort of a separate, or at least partially separate pathway. Now it can also go the opposite way, so the emotional circuits are damaged, but the voluntary movements are okay. When it comes to involuntary facial expressions, there are so many that we can recognize that have such an incredible range, even in relation to one experience. So for example, if we're going to imagine the expression of someone in pain, it could be that their back just went and it doesn't hurt now necessarily, but it took their breath away for a second and now they're walking carefully just to sort of get back into it. Or it could be, you know, long-term pain, or it could be just the agonizing pain of getting slightly tapped in a football game. So whether it be to communicate that we have a real emotional or physical need, or whether it's just to try and get a free kick, the power of the facial expression is undeniable and part of the incredible thing that we have as being human. So have a look around at people talking to each other and what happens when they're talking. You're using these muscles all the time without even realizing it. And you know, if they're looking above you and being terrified at the same time, jump. Please, if you could, give this video a thumbs up, like and subscribe to the video. See, I'm trying to do it without facial expressions, but you know what I'm saying.